Facebook has trust issues. Trump yaks it up with Putin and loses a lawyer. Former porn, Playboy, and Apprentice stars prepare for legal battle with the President of the United States. Austin police say the package bomber is a, quote, challenged young man. Congress scrambles to pass a $1 trillion spending bill. And it's only Thursday. I'm Jonathan Capehart with opinion writers Molly Roberts, Christine Emba, and Karen Tumulty. As always, send us your comments and questions on YouTube, keep it clean, and Facebook, and we'll tell you what we think. But first, John Dowd, President Trump's personal attorney, has resigned. The departure comes as Trump is bulking up his legal team to respond to the special counsel's Russia investigation. Now, we don't have footage of the resignation, but I'm guessing this is what Dowd looked like. All right, gang. What does this tell us about Trump's, how he's preparing for a likely interview with Special Counsel Mueller?
I think it says that he's preparing not very well. The reason that Dowd left apparently is because he was beginning to think, not really beginning to think, but was increasingly irritated that Trump was ignoring all of his recommendations and seemed bound to go his own way and follow his own instincts when it came to responding to the Mueller probe, talking about the Russia investigation, generally interacting in public with his accusations. And it's safe to say that his angry tweeting, his sort of random out-of-nowhere agreements to meet privately or to speak under oath to the general counsel were maybe not the smartest legal moves, and his legal team has become more and more frustrated.
It also comes a couple of days after he adds to his legal team Joe DeGeneva, former U.S. attorney, who has argued publicly that this whole Russia investigation is illegitimate. And you know, I think in terms of preparation, I think there's a real chance that what the president does, if in fact at some point he does end up in front of the special counsel, is that he declares this whole investigation is illegitimate, pleads the fifth.
Okay, if the President of the United States pleads the fifth, is that not a constitutional crisis?
It would certainly be the first time that had ever happened, but no. I mean, I think that it becomes much more of, you know, a political crisis. Trump may be the only politician on the planet who would think he could get away with this.
Right.
And he might.
He might, but I mean, he can go in there to the special counsel Mueller and say, you're illegitimate, and I'm not answering any of your questions, so, you know, bite me. It was basically what he could say. But if Mueller right now, the president is focused on collusion. There's no such thing as collusion. As Eric Holder said here a few weeks ago, forget about collusion. It's conspiracy. And what we know now is that Mueller is looking at the possibility of obstruction of justice. We have so many examples of that. Could the president saying this is illegitimate and I plead the fifth overcome what we're seeing with our own eyes, which is, as Eric Holder again said a couple of weeks ago, a technical case of obstruction of justice by the President of the United States? We're like, Molly,
well, right. I
Tell
mean,
me, Molly.
I have absolutely no idea. I also have absolutely no idea how anybody is going to react to any of this. I mean, so far, he seems to be getting away with absolutely everything.
Well, getting away with absolutely everything because of Congress, because of the Republican-controlled Congress, and they don't say anything to him?
Right, exactly. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It's, you know, it is far from clear that it is even possible to charge the President of the United States with a crime.
Right.
In fact, the only remedy that we know of is impeachment.
Right.
And impeachment, it is completely up to Congress, and specifically up to the House to
Right.
decide what constitutes a high crime and misdemeanor.
Right.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. If he pleads the fifth and then Mueller says, well, there's all this obstruction of justice stuff, and then it's up to Congress to decide what's going to happen here, from what we've seen so far, it's not looking good to me that Trump is really going to face any consequences.
Okay, so in that answer, there I see two twin strands. There's impeachment, which
Right.
relies on Congress to decide that there are high crimes and misdemeanors, which is such a broad definition that, you know, a ham sandwich could be impeached given that definition. But then when it comes to Mueller and obstruction of justice, that's not a matter of opinion or hearsay. I would suspect if Mueller comes forward and says, yeah, he pleaded the fifth, but Mr. President, here's all the evidence of you obstructing justice. He can plead the fifth, but still face charges, no?
But can he? I don't know. That's the
Exactly.
problem.
That would be the test. And, you know, ironically enough, back when the question was whether Bill Clinton could face charges, among the people who argued that it was possible to indict a sitting president of the United States was one Joe diGenova.
Can we talk a little bit more about this guy? You know, it seems as though the reason why he was hired is, okay, fine, he's a former U.S. attorney, he's a lawyer, but he's on the president's radar screen because he's literally on the president's television screen being a booster of the president. Is that enough to get hired by the Trump?
Apparently, that's all that matters right now. I mean, I've been having so much trouble keeping track of these Trump lawyers. I thought, oh, Dowd he's more brazen. He's more with Trump on this. Ty Cobb is the one who's telling Trump to kind of calm down and scale it back. Apparently, even Dowd isn't going in hard enough for Trump. So no, what Trump wants is the people who say the things that he is already thinking and who confirm them on TV. And we're seeing that with Kudlow, too. It's not new. It's just going all across.
And one of his favorite words when he talks about the qualities that he wants to see in the people who work for him, and specifically in his lawyers, is killers.
Right. And these are people who are killers on television. But are they killers in the courtroom? Because what we do know about Mueller's team is that he has assembled a team of killers, right?
Yeah.
In all facets.
Right, but to me at least, I think the scary thing about this question and the questions that we're going to be forced to ask going forward is, does that matter? Do legal questions matter? Do constitutional questions matter? Or is it really, well, I'm a big supporter of President Trump and he says that this is nonsense, so I'm just going to keep believing it's nonsense.
Right, I mean, it's just,
no. I mean, even when it comes to sort of the House moving forward on impeachment proceedings, you're right, a ham sandwich could be impeached. Is the House going to do it? It doesn't seem to have any relationship to the truth of the matter or even sort of its relevance to the American public, but it's keeping their supporter, their president, who is presumably passing laws and legislation that supports the Republican Party in power. Do they want to get rid of that?
For
Probably
a ham
not.
sandwich to be impeached, it would have to have lower than 70% approval among the Republican base.
And that is not where the president is. He is way up there. You were going to say something, Molly, before we move on to Vlad?
I was going to interrupt Christine with almost exactly what Christine said, so it was good I didn't interrupt. I was going to say it's a thread we've been talking about the whole time. If this depends more on impeachment and not, if we were going to say it's maybe not possible that he can even be charged with crimes here. It's all about impeachment. Impeachment is so much about spectacle and about performance, and so are they killers on the TV screen? Maybe that matters more than being killers in the way that Mueller's team are, where they actually know how the law works and how to investigate people.
Well, we're going to talk about a killer on the TV screen and in the court of public opinion a little bit later.
Fair enough.
I want to right now talk about how President Trump ignored warnings from his aides this week and congratulated Russian President Vladimir Putin on winning an election that observers called a sham. But he seems to be proud of it.
I had a call with President Putin and congratulated him on the victory, his electoral victory. The call had to do also with the fact that we will probably get together in the not too distant future so that we can discuss arms, we can discuss the arms race. As you know, he made a statement that being in an arms race is not a great thing. That was right after the election, one of the first statements he made.
Okay, Karen Tumulty. Now, there are people, supporters of the president, who say, what's the big deal that he talked to Vladimir Putin? Didn't Obama call and congratulate Putin when he won his election? So what's the issue here? What is the issue here?
Well, there are a set of issues here. First of all, The fact that he was getting this advice, do not congratulate him
In all caps.
from his own foreign policy team, suggests that the president is on a completely different page from his own administration when it comes to Russia, which they've recently imposed sanctions. But the president, I think it is less disturbing whether or not he offered perfunctory congratulations to Vladimir Putin than the things he hasn't said. He has not condemned them for what appear to be their ties to chemical attacks in London. He has not really said anything strong about the fact that they attempted to interfere with our election. I think what's the bigger issue is what he's not saying.
Yeah,
I think, does Karen speak for all of us here?
I think that's accurate. I really still can't get over exactly what you were saying. The fact that the Washington Post reporting first revealed that there were literal cards from his advisors. His briefing book had a section with "Do not congratulate" in all caps, and he just completely ignored it. Maybe he doesn't read the briefings. We've heard that before. Apparently he's complained that McMaster's briefings verbally are too long, so maybe he wasn't listening to that either. But this is another example, I think, of just the president clearly going his own way, not listening to advisors, not even keeping them abreast of what he's thinking. Also, he said that, he and Putin might meet shortly and talk. Apparently that was something else that caught his advisors totally flat-footed.
Yeah.
The State Department and everyone else, in the same way that his agreement to meet with Kim Jong-un was a total surprise to everyone.
And that, by the way, I think is a real thing that has to be on his advisors' minds. I mean, if this is a president who, as he defended this, said it was all about personal chemistry and establishing a relationship, I mean, what if this meeting with the North Korean dictator ever actually happens? Is he going to walk into that room worried about his personal chemistry, or is he going to walk into that room with a clear set of U.S. foreign policy objectives that he wants to further?
I mean,
You got to guess?
I think it's the former. He's gonna walk in there, it's like, "Hey, Kim, how you doing? Like, we're Buzz. We run countries. Like, we're the strong men. Let's do whatever." I mean, Molly, please tell me that I am unbelievably cynical.
I don't think you're unbelievably cynical at all, or maybe we're all unbelievably cynical. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think we saw in this whole "do not congratulate" debacle that this is all about Trump. And Karen said, here are all the things he's not saying. We're not talking about that. Now, he's also managed to change it so that we're talking about Trump is furious at who leaked this, and the staff are furious at each other for who leaked this. So it's become another story about how crazy the White House is, and it's not even as much about Trump's bizarre policy toward Russia anymore. It's about the spectacle. It's about the personality.
Well, to Molly's point, Karen, we're talking about the spectacle and how just like I used to say like the wheels are coming off the bus. There are no wheels on the bus anymore. This is like grinding metal. Okay, fine, it's a sled on the snow that's already melted and gone. But what does that say to the American people that the White House every day seems to be on fire with dysfunction? He's furious that someone leaked out this thing where he was "do not congratulate," and yet he does it anyway. To me, it seems like not only is the president not a grown-up, but the grown-ups who used to be in the room are either discredited, not listened to, pushed out, or just gone.
Jonathan, I think you missed the tweet. There's no chaos, only great energy coming from the White House. First of all,
Please qualify energy.
Well, I think that where this becomes really something to worry about is if we ever, God forbid, hit some very serious national or international crisis. That's the moment where you need all hands on deck. You need the expertise in the room. You need the judgment in the room. And you need a White House team that is not acting on one man's impulses.
Okay, so you just talked about how, God forbid, something happens. So we have had a few things happen which under a normal presidency would be a big deal. And yet, I was thinking Hurricane Maria and Puerto Rico. That was a miserable failure. Charlottesville, where they tried to get him to do the right thing. He looked like he was in a hostage video, and then gets to Trump Tower, and he's like King Kong, screaming about how there are good, fine people on both sides, and what's white supremacy? I hope that this particular thing that we're afraid of, this international thing, where it will require the President of the United States to be rational and calm and thoughtful and listen to his advisors. If/when that happens, he can rise to the occasion. And this is such a terrible segue, but President Trump is facing mounting political and legal challenges from alleged relationships. I really did not plan this. Alleged relationships he had with women before becoming president. A New York court has ruled that a defamation suit filed by a former Apprentice contestant against Trump can proceed. And a former Playboy playmate is suing the National Enquirer for the right to break her silence about an affair she says she had with Trump years ago. All of this as adult entertainer Stormy Daniels ramps up her public offensive as she tries to nullify a non-disclosure agreement she signed about a relationship she had with Trump. So take a look at this tweet from Stormy Daniels. Technically, I didn't sleep with the POTUS 12 years ago. There was no sleeping, hee hee. And he was just a goofy reality TV star. But I digress, ... People do care that he lied about it, had me bullied, broke laws to cover it up, etc. And P.S. ... I am not going anywhere. XO, XO, XO. All right, Molly.
Well, she is definitely not going anywhere. Everywhere you look at the TV screen, it's Stormy Daniels. It's Stormy Daniels' face. It's often, if on CNN, it's Stormy Daniels' chest. I mean, she is everywhere.
Because you did the lie detector test.
Yes, yes.
Segmenting
It is difficult to avoid, and it's good that people are going hard on the story. I love the kind of you go girl feeling we all have here. I'll take it over Joe Biden threatening to beat Trump up any day.
Well, look, I sent out a tweet yesterday. You go to Stormy Daniels' Twitter feed.
It's amazing.
It is incredible. Sister girl, it's like if you don't come for me unless I send for you. Her tweets are beyond fantastic.
I think it's fascinating to see someone who's kind of from the world Trump was in before this, using the same tactics that he's been using all his life to out-Trump Trump.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, look, what's happening here is we've got two courts that Trump and all of these people are playing on. There's the court of law, and then there's the court of public opinion. And in Michael Avenatti, who is Stormy Daniels' lawyer, and Stormy Daniels herself, President Trump has met his match because he has used the court of public opinion to get people not to pay attention to what's happening in the court of law. Think about it. You were just saying a moment ago, Karen, that Stormy Daniels is going to be on 60 Minutes on Sunday. People, that interview was taped about 2 weeks ago. We have been talking about Stormy Daniels since before she sat down with Anderson Cooper, and we're going to be talking about her days, if not weeks, if not months after Anderson Cooper. Is Stormy Daniels and Summer Zervos and Karen McDougal, are they going to be the ones that focus the American mind on the disarray and dysfunction of the Trump White House and the president?
Well, I think that in the case of Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, it is not going to come as any great shock, even to people who support Donald Trump, if they are ultimately allowed to that he turns out to have been a cad. I do think the Summer Zervos thing is in a different realm, in that this is a woman who claims that she was, that she was essentially sexually assaulted by Donald Trump. He counterpunched, which he is so proud of doing. Now she is suing him for defamation. If that proceeds, and the court has ruled that it should, as President Clinton learned, when you start down the road of a lawsuit, as happened with Paula Jones, it can go in all kinds of directions, and there will be a lot of other women who are called in to talk about their experiences under oath.
And this is the whole discovery, right? There's discovery. But the president, I guess this was, God only knows, it could have been yesterday, but a few days ago, threatening Stormy Daniels with like, what, 20, I'm taking you to court for $20 million
For
Right.
incidents.
for
yeah.
each incident of violating the NDA. Do you buy the notion that that lawsuit has less to do about Stormy and everything to do about the 18 other women who are out there with NDAs saying to them, if you think about doing what she's doing, this is what's going to happen to you?
Right. I think that the bigger risk is not even necessarily any sort of legal penalty or punishment. Yes, people know that Donald Trump is a cad. It's pretty obvious that he's not, his organization didn't hand Stormy Daniels $130,000 for nothing. For a deal maker, that would be a terrible deal, for one thing.
I mean, $130,000. Oh my
Also,
God.
it's not enough. But I digress. Stormy Daniels.
Right out of Michael Cohen's pocket, right?
Yeah, his
From a
private
home
equity
equity
line. No, but I think one of the interesting and I think more worrying things about these three cases appearing is that Donald Trump's support during the election and afterwards was shored up by white women, by white conservative women, by evangelicals, and that support has been dropping drastically over the months that he's been president. And I think that this is just not even necessarily the legal questions, but the fact that three women are coming forward. He presumably was having these affairs, right after his wife had given birth to his child. Now, as Stormy Daniels said, he's trying to bully them. He's accusing them of defamation. Like these, in this moment where we have Me Too, where we have women speaking up about all sorts of things and really sort of organizing on a grassroots level and sort of realizing their power and frustration, this could, be a spark that calls more women forward and that makes it harder for evangelicals to make excuses for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, Karen, because I want to come to you on this, picking up on what Christine's talking about, because you're a veteran political reporter. You have been out on the hustings. You have met and interviewed the people that Christine's talking about. Does it ring true to you that white evangelicals, given everything that you know, that these suits, these women, are going to ultimately break the bond between them and Trump?
If white evangelicals in Alabama didn't desert him over Roy Moore, I don't think he loses people. But I do think this potentially stirs up the opposition even more so than it was. And if that is enough to flip the House this fall, potentially even flip the Senate, he's in a world of trouble.
And we still haven't talked about the broader patterns that this plays into beyond being a cad or treating women badly, is a mild way to put it. We haven't talked about the hush money. We haven't talked about even the NDAs. I mean, we just learned this week that he had all his staffers sign NDAs, and so much of this is showing us ways that Trump operates that are concerning beyond the realm of his sexual relationships.
Right. I mean, what it shows is that we have a private citizen who was never in the world of politics and certainly never thought about running. Well, he's thought about running for president before, but he's not been in that world in the way veteran politicians who run for president, become president, were politicians. And he's just taking his private life and bringing it to the presidency without a care whatsoever for custom, traditions, or laws. I'm just going to put it out there. That's right, I said it. So I just wonder at what point, which breaks? Does Trump break, or does Trump break the presidency?
I'm thinking that it may be that Trump breaks the presidency. He really does not actually seem to care that much about the presidency, about constitutionality, about tradition. He cares about Donald Trump and keeping Donald Trump and maybe one or two favorite family members safe.
You know what that's called in the movies? Crime family.
Say nepotism.
You're kinder than I am.
Yeah. But you see that Trump's private life has kind of left him extremely open to maybe blackmail from other countries. There's a lot of sort of messy
Right.
stuff going on under the covers. These NDAs are hiding things that may be legal, probably are not. He doesn't seem to actually care about the legality of these agreements. He just wants to protect himself. And so far, as we've kind of talked about, the Republican Party and his supporters are still content to keep him in the White House, bending all of the rules and traditions that we normally have around that space in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm calling them all of this the silence of the lambs. We could talk about Trump and the porn hullabaloo, but we got to move on because there's another thing that's happened this week, and that's Facebook. Now, how the mighty have fallen. Or have they? CEO Mark Zuckerberg made his first public comments this week since we learned about a major data breach by Cambridge Analytica, the political consulting firm that did work for Trump's presidential campaign. Take a listen to Zuckerberg.
This was a major breach of trust, and I'm really sorry that this happened. We have a basic responsibility to protect people's data, and if we can't do that, then we don't deserve to have the opportunity to serve people. We need to make sure that there aren't any other Cambridge Analyticas out there, right, or folks who have improperly accessed data. So we're going to go now and investigate every app that has access to a large amount of information. But I think what's clear is that in 2016, we were not as on top of a number of issues as we should have, whether it was Russian interference or fake news.
All right, who's buying this?
That didn't get a lot of likes.
Just as Mark
Those are
Zuckerberg
not allowed.
convinced me he was a normal human by grilling steaks for several hours on live video, he has totally convinced me, yeah, he did this. He showed himself grilling steaks.
No.
Anyway,
It might as well have been grilling steak there because, just personally speaking, I didn't believe a word that was coming out of his mouth. I don't get a sense that he feels like his company is in deep trouble.
Well, go on, Molly.
I am not convinced, no matter how much Mark Zuckerberg wants to live up to this original idealistic vision of Facebook, that he possibly can, when the whole model of the app or website or whatever we're calling it now, when the whole model is we want to bring this to everyone, so we have to keep it free. To keep it free, we need to have advertising dollars. To get advertising dollars, we need to give companies people's data.
Okay, well then that leads to the question, well, who owns the data? If I go through and I click Karen Tumulty 5,000 times in an hour, and like, do I get to own that data? Does Facebook own that data? Do I have any control over who gets my data, sees my data?
Well, there are two things I think he needs to do if he wants to convince people that he is sincere about sorting all of this out. Number one, what he did not do in that interview was agree to come testify on Capitol Hill himself. And number two, they need to tell those 50 million people whose data got ripped off who they are and what they shared.
So I think Mark Zuckerberg released a statement naturally on Facebook before doing the CNN interview yesterday, and also ahead of an interview that he did with another publication. And in the later interviews, he did actually say, that he was sorry. So thanks, I guess, Mark Zuckerberg. But he also said that he had waited to speak until they had a plan in place. And apparently that plan did include putting together a tool that would alert the 50 million people whose data may have been touched by Cambridge Analytica, that had happened. He also said that he was in some way actually open to Facebook being regulated. In fact, the question was not necessarily even should Facebook be regulated, but how. Of course, that leaves open the question of, is Facebook going to be regulating itself, or is it going to let the
Should
government or
should
Congress
it be regulated
do it?
like a utility? Should it be like the Con Ed or Dominion Power or whatever it is we have here, because I don't pay our bill. My husband does, but so I don't know who. But should it be regulated like that?
I think, again, that's just like something that we should be sorting through in a very, the whole kind of ethos of the internet is freedom. It's a very libertarian kind of place. But at the same time, as it matures, it is developing a lot of characteristics that are similar to a public utility.
The idea of the government regulating Facebook, I think, should make us a little nervous, especially when we see what more authoritarian governments have been trying to do already for Facebook to operate, and for a lot of these companies to operate in a place like China. They need to give over all these corporate secrets. There are ways that those governments can be coercive. So now we see how much data there is and how it's getting handed over to people. Think of a government asking for that data when they're regulating these companies, and it makes you a little queasy.
One more point, Christine, and then the two more things we got to get to
There's so much
before
news this
everyone
week.
leaves us.
Yeah, I mean, that said, governments having control over our data should make us nervous. But if you think of what other governments, especially in Europe, have done with regulation of sites like Google and Facebook, not necessarily taking control of data themselves, but putting rules and laws in place that keep Facebook and Google from saving personal data or sharing personal data with companies without alerting the actual owners of that data, or even just the right to be forgotten, allowing people to, when they delete a profile from Facebook or ask to have their results removed from Google, making sure that's done. Those are consumer protections that it's unlikely these companies would volunteer to do themselves, but perhaps facing the threat of government fines or government regulations or being outlawed in some way, they might actually be compelled to make a change.
Maybe we should do a special show on what the hell to do with Facebook, but we can't do that here because we're running out of time. But I wanted to get your reactions on two things. One, the Austin bombing and the budget. Authorities have identified 23-year-old Mark Anthony Condit as the bomber who terrorized Austin, Texas, with a series of explosions. The bombs left 3 people dead, including Condit. And on Wednesday, interim Austin Police Chief Brian Manley said he watched Condit's 25-minute video confession.
What I can tell you, having listened to that recording, he does not at all mention anything about terrorism, nor does he mention anything about hate. But instead, it is the outcry of a very challenged young man talking about challenges in his personal life that led him to this point.
Outcry of a challenged young man who's just crying out about the problems in his life. I do not mean to make light of whatever challenges Condit was going through. But Christine, articulate for me, because I'm pretty sure we're on the same page on this, maybe.
Frankly, I absolutely cannot with this sort of coverage of, yes, people who are terrorists, but who apparently just happen to be white males and so are super sympathetic. Honestly, even our own paper, one of our headlines after this bomber's identity was revealed was, he was a young man who was frustrated with his life. Who isn't frustrated with their life? I'm frustrated by things. I don't go around bombing people. And then this police chief says, well, in his confession, there was no mention of terrorism or hate, as if terrorists write letters that say, hello, I'm a terrorist, and also I hate you. I think if you're killing people with package bombs, that shows a certain amount of hate. It's ridiculous that so much sympathy and so much questioning about his motives and like whether his homeschool was nice enough is given to these frankly terrible people. I mean, he went around killing people, but when it's a person of color or a person of Muslim descent.
Could you imagine if it turned out like this was Ahmed Mohammed?
Well, for one thing, the president would have said something about it by this point, as
Yeah.
opposed to just ignoring
He
the
finally
whole
spoke
situation.
up when the guy was caught, as if to,
He did
take
say
some
it's
credit
a good
for.
thing he's dead.
Great.
But while it was a
Helpful.
problem, he was not talking about it.
All right, let's move on because finally, congressional leaders have reached a $1.3 trillion spending deal to keep government agencies open through September. Now, who are the winners and losers? I seem to recall that, well, Republicans didn't like spending, and that that this was bad, and that Obama was like digging a hole deeper for future generations, and like we got to get this under control. What's up with this $1.3 trillion?
Jonathan, that's so last election.
That's so Earth
Come
One?
on. Yeah.
Well, they like defense spending. They got that, a lot of it. They ignored Trump's austerity budget. Yes.
Okay.
Democrats got some spending, but less spending than the defense spending. I think the troops are a big winner.
The Democrats did prevent some excessive spending on the so-called border wall. Although Trump got, I think, 1.6
Yeah,
billion
they're
for border safety, it was not for
he
the
said
wall.
more is forthcoming.
It does seem like the strategy on Trump and his wall from Congress is give a mouse a cookie.
Yeah.
And so he got 1.6 billion. He didn't get his 25 billion. The money goes to kind of a fence, not a concrete wall. But it just, they keep giving him enough that he can keep insisting that this fantasy of his is going to happen.
But doesn't when you give the mouse a cookie, doesn't the mouse come looking for more? I mean, won't Trump keep coming back and demanding, I want the money for the wall and holding other things up?
They want him to keep signing their legislation, so they will give him more cookies probably in future bills that they need to get him to sign.
I love how we're talking about
But
the
just
president.
not a whole crate of cookies at once. It's an individual cookie.
A porn star will dole them out.
I love how we're talking about the President of the United States like he's a dog begging for treats. But I'm just going to have to leave that little editorial comment there because we are out of time, but obviously not out of opinions. So check us out on WashingtonPost.com/opinions. And remember, if we're sitting here and we're exasperated drinking out of white mugs, it's only Thursday.